Welcome, host here, Chris Swick, from the depths of darkness to the light of success. Today, I got a great guest with me, a world-renowned photographer, Steve Carty. Why don't you give the audience a little bit rundown about yourself, Steve?
Oh my God, man, I'm not all about the egos, but thank you, Chris, for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it, especially during these crazy times. It's amazing chatting with other cool people in the industry, other cool creatives. To give you a background on myself, I am a professional photographer. I've been a professional photographer since 1992. I would say I'm an editorial photographer, meaning I shoot magazines, advertising, specializing in people. Shoot quite a few musicians. People might know me because I've shot Pharrell and Kanye and Tom York from Radiohead and Colin Firth and Michael Sheen and a bunch of people like that. So that's, I guess, how my work, I guess that's a bit of a background about me and my work. I also direct some motion. I direct a little bit of video. Been doing a lot more video over the last 10 years. And I'm at your service, man. Let's talk.
Nice, man. That's awesome. So, we'll start at the beginning a little bit. What was your childhood like growing up, and where did you grow up? Were you originally from Toronto?
Yeah, Chris, I was born in a small town called Bethlehem under three large stars. Came from the east. No, seriously. I'm from Scarborough. I mean, I was born in Scarborough Centenary Hospital, grew up in East York. So went to East York schools, went to East York Collegiate. My love for photography really came out in high school. I'm sorry, there's just...
it's all good. That's all part of the podcast. I love it.
End of the world, like sirens going by. I apologize for that. Basically, I started... my brother is older. He's 8 years older than me, and he's a photorealistic painter. So imagine I'm 8, my brother's 16, and he's painting photographs. So for me,
so that's what it is, painting actual photographs onto canvas?
Yeah, photorealistic painting. He's so incredible and has such patience. So when I was young, I had this artistic, influential brother, but I didn't have a way to express myself creatively. And when I grabbed a pencil, it wasn't like him. So fast forward to when I'm 14, it's 1984. I think every dad in mid 80s was mandatory obligated to go buy a professional camera, irregardless of whether they A, liked photography, B, knew anything about it. But my dad saw that it was mandatory to buy these kind of SLR cameras at that time. And he came home with a Pentax ME Super and didn't know how to turn it on, didn't know how to put film in, didn't know how to focus, release the shot. And I'm like, Dad, let's figure this out. So open it up, put the film in, figured that out, showed him how to, so I snapped a couple of shots, gave him the camera, and off he went. So he processes the roll, gives me the couple of shots I took. I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm like, Jesus, this is exactly what I saw. My brother spending weeks on weeks drawing photorealism. I could just take a picture, holy shit. So that was the beginning of me really using that camera quite a bit, shooting, doing pictures on my street in front of my house, taking pictures of my friends. Nice. And then when I kind of got into high school, I went into high school. I was in a unique situation. My middle school was 7, 8, 9. So I went into high school in grade 10. So in grade 10, I'm 15, and there's a program on the docket called extended media, which was basically photography. Okay. So I was like, there's a course called photography? I'm taking it. Are you kidding me? It's a bird course. I know photography. I'm gonna take that. So took that, met my teacher. Her name's Catherine Yamashita. Catherine Yamashita ended up being my first real influence, or second, I guess, beyond my brother. And she discovered really early, hey, you have an eye for photography. Have you ever thought about being a photographer? Around that same time, she's showing us famous photography. She's showing us Vogue magazine, and really started putting into my mind that I could make a viable career as a photographer. So
nice. So that's at a young age, you got that put into your head already.
Literally when I was 15. So I didn't take it too seriously. I mean, again, I've played hockey
Oh, nice.
Organized hockey like my whole life since I was 4. So I was always kind of like a jock, but I didn't really fit into the jocks because I was too into school. I was kind
Yeah.
of too nerdy to be a jock, but also like too jockish to be a nerd, you know? So I kind of didn't really like fit in. And I wasn't really into like talking too much about my photography early on. Like it was kind of nerdy and it wasn't looked upon as like something that was cool at that time. So
Yeah.
I just did it in secret. Now, fast forward a few years, I start seeing that there's some really cute girls in school. One of the girls in school is a model. I take pictures of her. Those pictures go to her agency. And next
So
thing,
this is in high school that you're doing this already?
I'm 17, bro.
Wow.
So at this point, I'm like shooting models and shooting people around my class and my school and again, thinking I'm a photographer and thinking that I know it all and blah, blah, blah. So when I'm 19, I decide, okay, it's time to get like, I was working at McDonald's and just doing like part-time like cooking jobs and stuff. I decide like, okay, I kind of high school's finished, took a break in between high school and university. Like I applied to Ryerson out of high school, but then I withdrew my application because I was really
You just
nervous
wanted to
about
figure out what you needed to do? Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I was quite ready to go and be in university with adults. I really felt quite young at 18. So I decided to take a year off. I was going to work within the industry, quote unquote. So I got a job at Black's Cameras. At that time, film and processing was very big. Black's.
Is there even one of those around anymore?
I think they're only online, if at all. But imagine at that time there was a Black's on every corner.
Oh, for sure, even in my city too. Yeah,
like it was, and it's a Canadian company, so essentially, like that family really wasn't nimble and didn't latch on to the possibility that digital was the future, and that really cost them the company. So anyways, that's sort of like another story. But anyways, I worked for them and really advanced quickly within that company. Within the year that I worked for them, like ended up having my own store within like 8 months.
You had your own store, like owned it or managed it?
No, I managed, like they gave me a store. Like they,
nice.
Like after like they had me at TD Center, which was like the busiest, highest volume store because I had such a high level of knowledge of photography, and only certain stores sell certain kind of equipment. And I really learned how to talk shop. I really learned how to like learn about what people need and sell people the thing that they needed. And I kind of became a guy that people would come into the shop and be like, no, I want to talk to that guy. That guy knows what he's talking about. So
nice.
The sales thing and just getting the gift of gab, like for me, although
geez, we'd get along great if we met in person, man. The gift of gab, I think we both got it.
But I understand, for me, it's learned behavior. Like I've always been like a shy cat, and it's like kind of introverted. And I think the thing that's crazy is that
it's funny, you don't see an introvert in you, especially with all your works and everything that you're doing.
But the thing is that personality comes out when I have a camera in my hand. I mean,
wow.
I'm able to have that personality now, obviously, because it's kind of baked in. But understand, in the beginning, I used my camera to break the ice with people. Like, hey, I think you're great. Can I take your picture? And and that's like girls in school, and girls would be like, yeah, I'd love that. And it's like, all of a sudden, I'm like, that same guy without the camera would never have the courage to be like, hey, do you want to go have a coffee, or do you want to go out with me? Like, I didn't have that courage, but I could say, can I take your picture? And then that would give like after I'd be like, hey, here's the pictures.
It's almost like the liquid courage at the bar.
Exactly. But when you're like 17, 18, 19, like it was photography. So now I'm 19. It's in between high school and Ryerson. High school and what my future is Ryerson. But at that time, like I didn't know. I was kind of just working at camera stores. And I decided, okay, it was time for me to really like show my portfolio to a real modeling agency. And I had like shots of one real model and a bunch of girls I thought was cute in my school. So that's my portfolio, like my professional portfolio. Keep in mind, I'm 19. So I go to like a modeling agency, which still exists, so it will remain nameless. I go to a modeling agency and I make an appointment and I'm like, hey, I'm a photographer and I want to shoot your models, you know, like, let's go. And this woman opens my portfolio, looks and starts laughing, like, like, turns the next page. Turns the next page. And then she takes my portfolio into an office with the door open and shows it to everybody. And then they all laugh. And then she comes back and is like, oh, we needed to laugh. Thank you. Closes my portfolio, passes it to me, and is like, have a great day. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, they literally laughed me out of their office. Like, so here I am, like 19, humiliated. And this is like a morning appointment. So I have an appointment in the afternoon. And I literally, Chris, I'm telling you, I had the phone in my hand to cancel on this woman because I couldn't be humiliated twice in the same day.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
for
like,
sure.
screw it. I'm just going to go, right? I'm like, whatever. I'm just going
What
to
do
go.
you got to lose, right?
Right, exactly. So I go in, this woman sees me. She kind of feels sorry for me. It's like a smaller agency. So she's in there on her own. And she had found out she was pregnant that day. She was in a good mood. And it was just like, you know what, Carty, your portfolio, horrible. But I'm going to show you like what a portfolio looks like. And she pulled some books off the wall and showed me like, oh, this is George Whiteside. And this is like all like Don Miller and all these photographers that were working in Toronto at that time. Like she's showing me their portfolios. And
Now
like,
this is in the 80s, right? Or the early 90s?
this is 1989.
Okay.
1989. So she's showing me like what portfolios look like. And she had a couple of new girls that had come in that could be models, but didn't have any pictures. And she's like, you know what? Here, I got these 2 girls. Shoot these 2 girls. Let's see what you can get. I'm like, oh my God. I have 2 models from a modeling agency. So set up a shoot, met these girls. Again, keep in mind, I have no lights, no studio. It's just like me and these 2 girls.
You're running a skeleton crew almost, and just the camera and a
I
flash.
had no idea. A camera, one lens kind of vibe, right? So I bring them into an underground parking lot. I put on like a 4-point star filter. So it puts like crosses on all the lights.
Okay.
I get my car, turn the lights on. One of the other girls has a car. She turns her headlights on. And now there's like star points on like 8 lights or 4 lights in the background. Put the models in front, and it's now it look. And this woman, I bring back these pictures. This woman looks at these pictures and she looks at me. She's like, holy shit, you're a photographer. And then starts like giving me models. And again,
oh wow, that's how it all began.
I'm 19, pre-photography school. All I have is like high school photography education. So I shoot like, for this woman, I shoot like 10 or 12 models and build like a portfolio. And with that portfolio, I apply to Ryerson.
And now they're a big school for like photography and arts and stuff, eh? Yeah.
At that time, there was Ryerson was the 3rd best photography. And I mean, we're talking film, old school photography, like a really technical program. Actual film. You had to have a 4x5 camera in order to do the program, like a full large format. Pull the hood over your eyes.
Oh wow!
Like bellows, focusing with a loop. Like it was photography, like how Joseph Parse shot. So I went and learned like at that time. So I applied to that school, got into that school. The thing that was weird, and I don't want this to come off like an ego thing, but like I was one of the best in the school, and that's like I'm in 1st year. So in 1st year, I had people in 4th year asking me if they could be my assistant. Like that's
why do you think you set apart from the others and stuff like that in 1st year? You know, I'm not trying to.
I didn't go right from school. I didn't go right from high school.
Okay, you went and learned out in the community
right
and
into
stuff.
the industry. I started selling cameras, blah blah blah. So I ended up like getting like a really cool camera before Ryerson. And then it was like, then I had models in my portfolio, like real working models that were in magazines. And that was like in my book, and I was 19. So it was like coming into school a year older than everyone else was, like in high school. Like everyone went high school and they were like kids. So they liked photography, were good enough to get in. They hadn't done anything. So for me, I came in doing something. So my 1st year, I was like straight A's. And at the same time, 1st year Ryerson is line, shape, form, texture. And it's all black and white. And it's no people. So for me, it was like, wait a second, now I'm paying all this money to be in school and learning stuff that I learned 4 years ago. But what it was doing was like stripping everyone down to base and building up a real technical understanding for photography, which I kind of had, but not really. You know what I mean? So we, the professor, my photography technology professor at that time, going back to 1990, had taught Walter Chin, Walter Chin's a Jamaican Chinese photographer, shoots for Vogue, travels all over the world. Like he was like Walter Chin's professor, as well as Christoph Strube and like Strawn Campbell, like all these like big photographers sort of at the time. This guy at Ryerson had taught them. So he was my professor, and he's telling me, you're as good as those guys. And it was like hearing that kind of stuff, like you're as good as those
Now,
guys.
how did that make you feel,
are
like hearing this from the actual professor?
My ego was out of control. That's what happened.
I bet.
Like at 19 and having this portfolio and having these models, my head was like I couldn't fit in the room. Like I knew everything.
Like
so imagine
big like a beach ball, eh?
Bro, I went from straight A's in first year to second year failing out. Like failing out meaning I didn't go to class, I didn't do assignments, and I just used school for the facilities.
Just because Steve knew it all, eh? Was that your mentality then?
It was to the point where, first of all, my parents had just divorced, so now I was sort of like in this in between. Like I need to work now. Like I can't all this like playing around with these. It's like, listen, tell me what I need to know now to work, because I got to work. Like that's kind of what happened in between first year and second year as my parents got divorced. So second year, I went from being like, I'm a keen student, teach me everything you know, to when am I going to learn this? When can I use this studio? When do I get to use the lights that the fourth years can use? Because I'm doing stuff that the fourth years aren't even doing. And I'm not like, I became that guy. So I ended up negotiating with a fourth year student to be my assistant, to sign out lights that I couldn't sign out yet because I was in second year. I paid my tuition, but I wasn't going to class. Like there was all this like weirdness where and then I ended up going to that same professor who taught all these great photographers. And I'm like, this is my situation. My parents divorced, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Carty, don't let school interfere with your education. You're a great photographer. We can't teach you anything else because you're not paying attention anymore. You have your head somewhere else. So put your head 100% where it actually is, and you'll be successful. So I did that. I got a studio with my brother being the older painter. At that time, he was like 28 and I was 20. We got a studio on Queen Street, and like started photography / painting studio, and threw a party, and all of a sudden like Flair magazine is there and Chatelaine is there, and they're signing my guest book, and it's like models are there. Like I just came out of nowhere as this guy who was so young, but was shooting stuff that looked like Vogue. Like,
so you were originally started out shooting models before you started doing all these celebrities and stuff,
models, only models. It was only models until year 5. Like in year 3, but it's like that was my focus, and I kind of dropped on it because at that time, out of Ryerson, I don't know if you know cross processing. It's where you take slide film and you process it as C41.
No, I'm not too familiar.
So it's
Megan would be, but I wouldn't be.
100%. So basically, Chris, what we were doing, and it kind of came out of Ryerson in the 90s, was cross processing. So essentially it was like taking basically like straight film and making it look like it had like Photoshop effects, but it was done.
This is even before Photoshop then. Wow.
Way before Photoshop. So I managed in Ryerson to craft this look that when I dropped on the industry, my stuff just looked like, you would look through portfolios and then you'd be like, who's that? Because my stuff was just like way in the
it was like next level, but like into the future stuff almost, eh?
I just looked at Europe and Paris and all these influences that I got from Ryerson, looking at these famous Helmut Newton and Richard Avedon and all these like old school, like classic photographers. I was just looking at that stuff rather than, I guess, what other people were looking at, which I don't really know what they were doing, but basically it just like, it created this look and feel, which I rinsed for the first like 3 or 4 years of my career, which then I had a whole bunch of work that looked a certain way, and the industry look and feel was kind of changing. So I kind of had to like stop with that look and establish like a new look, which was really kind of strange around that. And then at that time I went to the Globe and Mail with my fashion portfolio and was like, hey, give me fashion jobs. And the Globe and Mail looked at my fashion portfolio. They're like, great. And they gave me a portrait to shoot. The art director there, Michael Gregg, was like an amazing guy. He said, any hack can take pictures of beautiful people in beautiful situations with beautiful hair, beautiful makeup, beautiful clothes. It takes a real photographer to shoot the rest of us. And I was like, whoa.
Well, that's a deep quote there, man. Wow.
Deep. So this I hold, I mean, I heard that in my ears like literally almost 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and I still hold true to it. And he would say things like, think of the most famous pictures that have ever been made. They're all portraits. Like, think of Henri Cartier-Bresson with that man jumping and he's just about to touch the water and there's like the reflection. Think of Whoopi Goldberg in The Milk, Demi Moore pregnant, body painted on the cover of Vanity Fair, like Winston Churchill, like standing black and white, Life magazine, like all these pictures that you remember from 50, 20, 10, 8 years ago are usually portraits, like National Geographic cover, Indian girl,
Yeah.
scarf over her head, green eyes, like green-eyed girl, Steve McCurry, like famous pictures, all portraits. So it's like portraits have this like lasting, timeless, forever quality.
It like sticks in your mind though too. You remember all these pictures, like even like just simple things in the news, you know what I mean? But it's just that capture, you know what I mean? Or portrait, like you say. So
Think about Vietnam War, the soldier with the gun to the head of that other, like these kinds of things are like burned into our psyche. And it's A, photojournalism, B, portraiture. So I realized like a true master photographer is not trying to shoot just fashion. The true masters shoot fashion, portraits, and usually one other thing. So I opened my mind to the world of shooting portraits. Doing that after 3 years, I had no interest in shooting fashion at all. Like I kind of walked away from it.
yeah.
And then it took probably 10 years of shooting just portraits before like streetwear started to come and hip hop started to come and
Yeah, it
the
was coming up
mix
in
of
the early 90s
clothing and
or whatever.
fashion. Yeah, like the late 90s,
Okay,
early
okay.
2000s is sort of, and again, like I'm now 10 years in my career. I'd shot Radiohead and like Tony Bennett and Oscar Peterson. Like I shot a
Did
lot of
this inflate your ego again, like you said at the beginning of
at that
school, or
time.
were you
At that
leveled off at
time,
this time?
once I started working, like
Yeah.
everything just went like once I got into Ryerson and met this professor, like this guy, it was his job to like just like
Yeah.
better photographers have been doing this shit 50 years ago without the camera, without the technology, without all the shit that you have right now. So don't stop patting yourself on the back. There's like, that was the vibe, is like, I started the industry relatively egoless and super friendly. And it's like, the work is good, but I'm just like, hey, let's go. Like, I was just so nonchalant about the type of work I was creating. And I just wanted more people to know about me. So that whole ego thing, like that left. Shooting the celebrities, you have to understand the ability to shoot celebrities. The only way that that works is if you're kind of an egoless person. Like,
Yeah,
you
for
have to
sure.
put the celebrity first. You have to like kind of fan that. Oh my God, you're so great.
It's almost like a lawyer. It's almost like a lawyer, you know what I mean? Like in a sense, you know, but I'm the one that you have to treat with respect and stuff like that because I'm your client, you know. It's same thing, same.
100%. And I
Yeah.
mean, I love people. That's why I've made a living as a people photographer. And I realized like you get more honey, you get more bees with honey than vinegar. You know, you just like, I love what I do and I'm really passionate. And the only times I've ever like gotten like or sharp or whatever is when I find myself with a person that doesn't take the situation at hand as seriously as I do. You know what I mean?
So coming to that point about the ego now, I got a question for you. So what makes you stand out now from the rest of the photographers in the world and stuff doing what you do without letting your ego get in the way? So I know you answered that with a little bit there, but egoless. So I just had that question now that came up. So
Well, I guess the way that I answer that, Chris, is like there's only room for one ego in any photo shoot type situation. So, I photograph subjects that are egoless and they are completely open to anything that I want to do with them. Like they're an open book. So that's
yeah,
like them saying, I want your idea to lead this story. You know, there's other photographers, there's other people who I shoot who they come with ideas. They're a musician, they're an actor, they're a writer, a director. Like they know what message they're trying to get across. So for me, in that case, then I become a mirror. Do you know what
You'd
I mean?
rather not work like that. You'd rather have the idea, run with the idea yourself, right? It seems that way is what you're saying.
I always come, like, I have a style, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I have a way that I want to put my eyes onto a subject. Like, I shoot very simple. I have like a very straight up approach. It's very non-distracting, like non-distracting backgrounds. Like I have a very, a style, I guess, a visual signature as far as how I shoot people. So it's like, I want to keep within my visual signature, but I also want to allow room for my subject to be themselves without my influence within that space, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
I create the space where whatever happens within that space is like, that's my visual. But what you do, that quirk, like the person yawns or they like scratch their eye or like all
and
of
that's
that,
the money
boom,
shot.
that for me, like I've gone past, like I shoot the safe, perfect, like pictures, like, or whatever you can call as perfect, but I also like to shoot the off moments, you know,
for
like
sure.
where they're kind of looking, they're looking at, like, where they're, because you can read so much in a person's expression, and I feel like that's the money, where it's like that second where they like let go, like boom, pictures.
Yeah.
So I also try to cue people to get into that state where photos aren't happening, but photos are happening. So I put my camera down a lot, talk to people, blah, blah, blah. As I'm talking, I reach back, I grab my camera.
You'll grab it while they're not even looking.
Like, yeah. And then I also, if I see the moment where they switch, I'm like, you felt that? You see that moment where you now started to be like you're seizing up because I'm about to train my camera on you? Don't fucking do that. Like, you know what I mean? And like, I'll call them on it, and they're like, I do that. And I'm like, yeah. And then I pull up my camera again. And I'm like, you do it again. You feel that?
Yeah.
So what you need to do is not associate me picking up, like, I'm picking up my camera because I see you amazing. So stop fucking changing. Like, I kind of get into people like, and they're like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like, I kind of help people get through the mentality of how to be a good sitter. You know, like, as a shooter, you have to know what it feels like to be in front of the camera, which is usually for some people painful. So I sit for my assistants. I sit when I do workshops. I mean, you know, I've done a workshop with Megan, and like she was with me for a week. And during that time, I forced her to be in front of the camera a lot. And funny, you see her life and her career after that, I feel like she's way more comfortable being in front of the camera now than she was when I met her as a student.
Oh, it's funny. Like, I go on shoots with her, or even doing a shoot for myself, you know, just impromptu shoots we've done in Montreal and stuff. And she's always in front of that camera, like you just said. And, you know, it makes sense, though. Maybe she learned it from you. I'll have to ask her. But
listen, in order to be a great photographer, and Megan has turned into such a great fucking photographer. It's like, you know what it's like to look through my Instagram and see like an amazing wedding photograph and like think that it's like a sponsored post, and look and be like, Megan McCormick Photography. I'm like, goddamn right, girl. Good for you. And it's like, that's because it's like people who I've touched in any way. And believe me, I've mentored like 300 people in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, like, or Miami, like, over the course of almost 30-year career. Like, I like to say, like, over 30 years, I've helped easily 10 people per year get into that headspace where they're ready to endeavor onto being a photographer on their own. That's something that I try to give back. And I also think that it's important to teach photographers about pricing, about their value, about industry standards, about what rates are, about how much your time is worth for a day. If you're worth, if you're a new photographer, you're worth like, say, $1,000 a day. But if you're charging 200, you're making it impossible for me to get 2,500. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
no, for
if you
sure.
charge 1,000, paying 2,500 is like, okay, well, that's 2.5 times more to get Carty. But I understand that you're new, so 1,000. But if you're saying 200 is like, that's what we pay assistants. You know what I mean? So saying that you'll do a job for that is actually hurting the industry. And if all people who are new had like I won't shoot for less than $500, then it becomes people can't get professional photography for less than $500. It's like you can't get a Chanel handbag for less than $1,200. So buying a Chanel handbag for fucking $200, there's something suspect about that handbag. Do you know what I mean?
No doubt.
So that's sort of like my mentality when it comes to your skill set. Like if you're a race car driver mechanic, you have a very specific skill set, and then you charge like $1,000 to fucking lift the hood on someone's car. Now, if someone else is like, dude, I'll look at your race car, give me $100. You're going to be like, no, bro, you can't look at my race car. You know, it's like, so that's like, it's hard because we're in like a DIY generation right now where people are like, I could do it myself. I could just buy some lights and like, I could just buy a camera and I could just figure it out. And it's like, wow. Well, I started photography in a time where you couldn't see the screen and see what was happening on the back. You had to know technically what you were doing in order to execute photographs. So now with that knowledge, making photography and click, look, that's exactly.
Which one do you prefer, digital or the film still?
I prefer digital because now digital, like I shoot 50 megapixels. Like my camera resolution is like one raw file is 4K monitors stacked like two up. That's to see one horizontal photograph that I shoot with my camera, 50 megapixels. Average cameras are like 25. So you can imagine like film, my Hasselblad, which is medium format, was matched at 6 megapixels. So now I shoot 50. I had to get a 5K iMac in order to compensate for how high res my photographs
how crisp these photos are, pretty much.
Now my photography it's beyond photorealism. So if you take the technical skills and then take the technology, what I'm able to deliver now instantly is so far ahead of what I could do before. And also because I see it as I work, I'm able to see it. I'm able to push light idea so far. Like I'm able to really like execute some stuff where you look at it, because I do everything in camera. Like I don't do post. Like I do post, a little bit of skin fix, a little color, blah, blah, blah. But really I'm not fucking around with stuff in post to make it look like me. I make it look like me in light and idea. So it makes it so I can push my light and my ideas into realms that, because you shoot and you look and you're like, I need to do this, this, this. You do that. And you're just like, you're able to make photography that, I mean, I do stuff now that I couldn't have done pre-digital, but still I can look at my film photographs and look at my digital photographs and look at them together as the same photographer because they don't differ so much. Like when you look at my website and look at my archive, most of my archives is shot on film, and you can see because they're squares. Like I shot square, which is like 6x6 format. And the thing that was great about shooting square is that you could make it a horizontal picture or you could make it a vertical picture just by cropping this way or cropping this way. So it's like many pros shot Hasselblad because of the versatility. And that's kind of what I did. So now, and it's funny, Instagram started with just squares, and that's kind of very based on.
I remember when it first came out, and then all of a sudden now it's like a blogs now and stuff. Like I do it myself too. I'll write some blog on there too and stuff. I just find it took off better for writing stuff like that and just posting a little picture about it on there and stuff. So
yeah, it's turned into a microblogging platform for sure.
For sure.
Like really, Twitter in the beginning was that microblogging platform, but when Twitter first started, you couldn't even add photos. It was just
it was strictly just writing. I remember that. I remember when Twitter first started, it was crazy, and then all these things have evolved so much, man. Like you too, you know. Like, how did you get into the shooting of all these big names, like all these hip hop artists and stuff like that? Like,
well,
how did that come about?
It's very simple. It started with the Globe and Mail. And because I started shooting portraits with the Globe and Mail back in '94, the portraits started as like shooting authors. And then it kind of...
so for their like sections in the paper sort of thing and stuff?
Like art. for the
Yeah.
arts and entertainment. So it would be
Okay.
like arts and entertainment. I would be shooting covers and insides, and it's like, and then there would be like book month, and I would shoot something, some author. I would shoot for like it just started like every week. I was doing like 2, 3, 4 assignments, and
Oh,
what
wow.
happened during that time is I learned speed. I learned how to like call the person, set up the time, set up the location, and then go there, execute on film, which
Yeah, and
means
this is well
one
before
time
cell
only.
phones and all that stuff.
No cell phones, nothing like that. Like
Yeah.
it was like I had a pager, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have a cell phone until 97. So I started my career professionally in 92 is when I got my studio. Started really shooting portraits in say 93, 94. I moved to Miami in 93 for a year.
Oh, you moved to Miami, eh?
Yeah, I moved to South Beach because
What took
I
you
wanted
down
to be
there?
I wanted to be a fashion photographer. And
That
at
was the
that
hot spot to
time,
go?
that was the place. Like I would be on the beach and there would be like the biggest photographers in the world shooting on the same beach. And it'd be like, I would shoot a model and the next day she was shooting with like Patrick DeMarchelier or like it was just, I was in it. So I moved to Miami for a year, lived there, survived only on photography. Literally saw Gianni Versace every morning because like I lived like 2 blocks from Gianni Versace. We went
Oh,
to
wow.
coffee at the same cafe. Like this was my life.
Did you
for
turn into friends with
a
them or
year.
no?
And no, it was nothing like that. I mean, I wasn't part of the Miami elite by any stretch of the word, but it was just, I was just like a working photographer on the beach and was there for a year. But the thing is when I came back, that like now I come back and I have portraits from the Globe and Mail before I left, and I have this crazy Miami fashion portfolio with like it's a nude beach. I mean the beaches down there are topless, so models are
Yeah.
doing topless shoots. All this stuff is just normal. I'm 23, 24 at that time. So coming back to Toronto with like now this portfolio from Miami, it was like Fashion and Design Quarterly and shooting all these like magazines. Like that's when the magazine stuff like really started coming. And I was shooting magazine stuff on film. Again, pre-digital, shooting editorials, shooting assignments where it's on film, shooting colors, shooting covers in color. And like where the tolerance is, like if you miss the exposure, there's no fixing it. Like it's just, it has to be perfect. So I really learned in Miami how to shoot like technically perfect pictures in almost any situation. So
Yeah,
coming back and
under
then
lots
starting
of
to
stress
work
and stuff like that, eh?
between like, but I was at the same point able to handle it because I've been on the beach where it's all about sun and you have a really short time to catch this perfect, like, so coming back and working in Toronto and having a studio, like it was easy. And
Yeah.
hip hop, the initial question was, when did hip hop come in?
Yeah, when did you get
Hip hop came in as popular, like I shot Tom York from Radiohead in 97, which is like a week before OK Computer. So shooting Radiohead, then it was Tony Bennett in New York City and Oscar Peterson. And now it's like Phil Collins, Roger Moore.
These are all guys you have
James
in your
Bond,
portfolio,
like,
eh?
yeah, of course. So these are like the
Wow.
people who I had been photographing leading up to hip hop.
Yeah.
And then hip hop broke. And it was like rappers were putting out albums, they're doing photo shoots, they're doing
So were
covers.
these people coming to you or were you getting them through this Globe and Mail job?
I was getting them through my portfolio and people, because there's no websites, right? It's people hearing of, oh, there's this photographer who shot Radiohead and all these celebrities. And it was like people had heard of me. And that was kind of the thing. And again, at that time, there was like 3 Black photographers in Toronto.
So you hadn't even blown up at this point yet, had you?
I was working, but I was still pre-hip hop. Hip hop is when the world really opened up to figuring out like who shot that, who did that video, who directed that. Like that's when people cared. No one cared with like Motley Crue albums and like Rolling Stones and Van Halen. Like you're not like, hey, who shot that Van Halen album? It was, but with hip hop, it was like that because everybody thought that they were going to be a rapper. So
Yeah, it's so true.
imagine,
Even
like,
today, they all think they are.
so imagine like 99, I get called to shoot my first hip hop album. And I shoot a hip hop album, and that album is like in record stores, and you can pick up a 12-inch, and I'm like, hey, that's my cover, you know? So
Yeah.
that started like, and it was a really outlandish, like I did a double exposure where the guy was like huge and then also small in the same picture. I put
So
them
who was
together
your
in
first
dark
shoot?
mode.
Who's this?
This guy, his name was Apples, and the album was called Giving You a Taste. But the thing is, although this guy didn't have an album, like Drake, in Drake's song Western Road Flows from his last album, he's talking about Big Apples was in front of Fluid with the like everybody knows Big Apples from back at that time. And
Oh wow!
I
So is this a
photographed
Toronto hip hop artist, Big
a
Apple?
total
Or?
Toronto hip hop scene,
Okay.
early 2000s, late 90s. Like everybody knew the clubs and Fluid and like where we all like, was just all a part of that industry at that time. So
Yeah.
basically I hooked up with this clothing store called Lounge. And Lounge Clothing, basically these guys were dressing all these rappers that came into Toronto. They were like going to Lounge and getting their clothes.
Okay. Okay.
And then these clothes are appearing in videos that are shot in New York and shot in LA. And I'm like, who are these guys that are Toronto? So I met them, said I'm a photographer. They're like, you're Steve Carty? Yo, dude, we thought you were white. It was like they were like trying to figure out someone to like, because they were trying to start this magazine and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so they saw me, saw my photography skills, saw my portfolio, and they're like, okay, we have this magazine and we're shooting everybody. So from there, it was like, do you want to shoot Ludacris? Do you want to shoot Pharrell?
Who
Do you
this
want to
Lounge
shoot
clothing
Kanye?
store got you these?
This is this magazine that they were affiliated with, where they would, it's literally, we had a magazine to print the stories. We had sponsors like Foot Locker and Athlete's World and all that stuff that were advertising in that magazine, which is essentially generating income to pay for editorial content.
Yeah.
And it was like, do you want to fly to Detroit to shoot D12? It's like, okay.
So these guys are paying for your flights everywhere.
100%, 100%.
Wow.
At that time, it was like, and at the same time, record companies like MCA Records, LA, signed Cardinal Offishall to his first album. And it's like, Cardinal's like, I want to keep the project. He's signed in the US, but he wanted to keep the project in Canada, photographed in Canada. And he's like, I want this guy, Steve Carty. He's the best black photographer in Canada. I want that guy to shoot it.
Nice,
so
man. That's awesome.
now
You got
he's
respect
just, like,
from all these
coming
guys.
to me with like an album. And it's like, okay, so that's like, it's like 5 figures. Back then, shooting albums, 5 figures, you know?
Wow.
So it's like, okay, so that's a 5-figure project. I shoot that. Cardinal's album comes out. Everybody sees it. It's like a shot all white. He's got the match in his mouth. It's like a well-known Toronto iconic
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
And on that album, he has Bacardi Slang and Old Time Killin' and all these big songs that become Toronto anthems. I shot the cover. Next, Chuck Lair has an album. He puts his album out, and he's like, I want the same guy that shot Cardi's album. So then I shoot Cardinal's, then I shoot Chuck Lair's cover. And then the Rascals put out an album, and they're like, yo, we want this. So it started to be like—
It's just like a chain reaction.
100% chain reaction. Anybody who shot hip-hop in Canada, I was shooting that. And it's like,
wow.
then now I have Pharrell in my portfolio. And it's like, okay.
Yeah,
so
how did that one go down? Just through this magazine too?
Again, through the magazine. It's like, dude, do you want to shoot Pharrell? He just produced Ludacris's album. He was about to be on Jay-Z's Dynasty Rock La Familia album. That song, I'm a hustler, baby.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to know, like, that's Pharrell. So I shot Pharrell at that time when it was like, people didn't really know, like, he wasn't a household name. Like,
yeah, no one knows the backstory behind him. That guy came from, like, just where he came from and what he did in such a short time was ridiculous.
He was a producer that was pretty much had 100% record of guaranteed hits. If he was producing your album, hit. So the first one that he did was Ludacris's album. And Ludacris's album, like, Cadillac bills, Cadillac wheels, don't you know my, like, that's all Pharrell's, like, like, he created these beats that were so sticky that it's like, much like in a very smaller scale, how I became in demand to create this kind of imagery.
Yeah.
He was in demand to create the beats because his beats were guaranteed. And at one point, Pharrell was, I'm sure he charges more now, but he was charging $1 million a track to
Wow.
produce a song, $1
Just
million
one song.
a track. And that's in 2000. You know what I mean? So you
Yeah.
got to imagine, like, photographing Pharrell at that time was, so that sort of like, I rocked the hip hop industry until the iPod came, and the iPod killed the music industry. I don't know if you know that, but the iPod.
No, what's that about?
Digital music came. People
Okay.
stopped buying physical CDs.
Yeah.
Napster, torrents, downloads. People like, that was the industry that where it was like legit music versus pirated music. It was like that war. So the record companies lost. You know
For
what
sure.
I mean?
No, they did.
Apple and streaming and all that stuff like that. So EMI, one of the biggest record companies in the world, closed their New York office. Like, every big record company had huge offices in Toronto, closed, consolidated, moved to, like, so we ended up, like, the record industry, I went from getting 5 figures an album to them basically not have, like, them telling the artist, you want an album cover? You better figure it out. Like, it was
you
like,
pay
it
for
went
it yourself.
like that.
Yeah.
100%. So they ended, like, the industry kind of crashed. The hip hop industry, shooting streetwear, the magazine kind of fell by the wayside. Like, trends kind of changed. And for me at that time, I had kind of painted myself in a corner, because anyone who'd said my name, they'd be like, oh yeah, that hip hop photographer. Because now it's like 5 years, that's all I did was hip hop. And it was like, and streetwear, and it was all. So
did you have to like rebrand yourself then, Steve?
100%. Third time now, right? Third time. Fashion photographer to the portrait photographer, portrait photographer to the streetwear.
Well, isn't it a third time a charm? I thought third time a charm.
After that, I painted myself in a corner. People only saw, like, forget Radiohead and Tony Bennett and all these. It was just, I just shot people who looked like me. Like, basically, that's what people saw me as. So I then actively started to, like, seek editorial portrait jobs again that weren't hip hop related. So I started working for the CBC, and the CBC at that time was a big sponsor of the Toronto Film Festival. They would cover the film festival. They saw my portraits, knew that I could shoot relatively quickly, and then boom, it started up again, where it was like, do you want to shoot Gabrielle Byrne? Do you want to shoot Romeo Dallaire? Do you want to shoot, like, all these, like, incredibly huge directors and actors at that time? And then that led up to, now we're 2000. Imagine now, fast forward 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, it's getting assignments like Michael Sheen for Hamlet in the UK. I'm getting hired from companies in Japan to shoot Colin Firth here. And it's like, it starts to go to be the point where I'm getting like 4 figures to shoot portraits for 15 minutes. Like, it really is like the speed aspect of it, and how I could connect with people quickly and execute a technically perfect cover. And it all feeling quite nonchalant and almost not, like, I kind of, over at that time, like 2010, I'd been doing it for 20 years. So I kind of had developed this speed and nonchalantness and humor and good vibes, and everyone's laughing and having a good time. And it's like, I just created this air in my studios, on my sets, where magic always happens because the vibes is always right. And I had to obviously adjust my pricing. In 2004, I switched from film to digital. So it was also hard for me around that time to learn how to price, because so much of shooting film was like expenses, where I would have to buy film. That's an expense. I'd have to process. That's an expense. Contact sheets, prints, scans, all these things that you would have to do. So it would be like, I'd do a job. The job would be 10 grand. It'd cost me $4 grand to do it, and I'd make $6 grand. Like, that was kind of the vibe. But then once digital started, people didn't understand, like, why am I paying you again? It's like, well, because I'm the guy with the eyes. And it's like, yeah, but you have no expenses. You know what I mean? It's just digital. You shoot, put it in your computer, you give it to me. Like,
that's
that
a lot more work than that. But the people don't see it.
100%. But believe me, in that time, they knew there was work before, because there was developing and like printing and all that stuff. Like, it was, but digital, you have a digital camera, just shoot and plug it in and give it to me. Like that.
Yeah,
and
for
it was
sure.
hard to like, to like sell the act of photography for a while. Like, there was like a few years in there. And I know a few photographers at that time kind of fell by the wayside. Like, they were holding on to film, like, no, film. And I was like, as soon as the cameras came to a point where they were like $2,000, bought a camera. Like, it's like
hopped on it right away, eh?
6 megapixels was my first digital camera. 6 megapixels, and it's like I'm 6. And imagine, I shot one camera, my Hasselblad. I shot from Ryerson from 1991 until 2004. One camera. I mean,
Wow.
I'd shoot 35 sometimes, but I had one 35 millimeter camera the whole time, and I had one film camera the whole time, and Hasselblad. And then digital, since 2004, it's now 2020. Since then, I've had 11 digital cameras. 11.
It's crazy
11.
how they break down worse off than the old film.
They don't break down. They just become obsolete.
Well, that
like,
too, yeah. It's like a MacBook or anything. It's like the next day they're obsolete lately.
So basically now it's like you have lenses. Lenses last forever, but you have to like chase the camera body. Like, oh my God, this next one came out. It's 100 megapixels. I'm shooting 50. I can't shoot 50 when there's 100 out there. I gotta get that one, and then you get that one, and then another thing. Like, so now you're kind of like
just one big cycle.
Listen, I miss film for that factor, but I don't miss film for the waste, because chemically, silver halide, the chemicals going down the drain, all that stuff, like, it was really environmentally bad. And despite wearing rubber gloves sometimes, and like the developer goes through your skin and actually was like affecting my health. And every time you'd shoot a roll of film, you'd create like a pile of garbage. Like, one roll of film would create like this much garbage. So you do a shoot for a day and you're creating a garbage bag full of garbage from shooting.
That's ridiculous, all the waste though.
And all that stuff is toxic. You're shooting Polaroid, like you peel a Polaroid and it's like all the chemicals that's on that shit that you peel away. You're just and dude, it's not ink. It's like silver halide. It's like uranium, bro. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, it's way, way deeper than just ink. Like, back then there was no inks. It was all like a chemical process that made that fucking picture appear. Remember, like, fucking Shake It Like a Polaroid Picture? Like, the Polaroid I would shoot, you would peel after a minute. So they would be together and they would develop together, and then you'd peel off the chemical and throw it away. And then that's your picture. So the shit that you would be throwing away, you're shooting 60 Polaroids a day. So that's like just pure gooey silver, like just garbage in the bin, in the landfill, in the bin, in the landfill. And it's like, so for that side of it, oh my God, I'm so happy that there's not that amount of waste. But how much waste has gone into the raw materials to create 11 digital cameras for me since
it's so true.
You know what I mean? How much raw materials goes into creating CMOS sensors and fucking LCD screens and all that shit. It's like the waste in a MacBook Pro. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, it's recyclable, but it's like, really, bro? Like, how much of it is really recycled, and how many third world countries are getting like murdered and blah, blah, blah for you to get the shit that's inside this computer, which I'm using to chat on Zoom. You know what I mean?
It's so true. Like, all these things come from all these different countries and stuff, like the gold in it, all that stuff.
So there is like I like to consider myself awake. So I fight with that side of it too. Yeah. Like, I wish we weren't always chasing like the latest new. Like, I got a $1,000 printer behind me. When it came out, it was $1,000. Now you can probably buy it for $350. But it's like, is it printing perfectly? I don't know. I don't use it enough, so there might be some streaking.
Who the fuck uses a printer these days?
Like, listen, to print like fine art prints sometimes, like some of the stuff like I have, like up here on my wall. I mean, these ones are all too big to print, but I have smaller ones like on other walls that you can't see in this shot that I do print at home. And it's like, there was a time where to shoot a model and be able to shoot them and then sell them files and then also sell them prints.
Oh, you needed that printer. Yeah.
That's a no-brainer, because I used to go to Picto and pay a lab like 12 to 15 bucks a print and then sell that print for 25 and make $10. Now you sell that print for 25 and make like my profit it's way more, but true, I don't make many prints anymore because people have these things called iPhones. Watch, it's a screen. They do everything. They do everything right here. Why do
I know. I got one myself.
So really, I miss a lot of the old school of photography. I miss the manual. I miss seeing the image come up in the developer as you're like shaking the tray, like all that stuff. Like I kind of miss that, but I appreciate the instantaneousness of shooting something and being able to drop it right away. Like that part, I like it, but I also I feel like if photography was seen as more of a craft like it is, I feel like there'd be less people doing it. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like when I started, it was like being a mechanic. Like you had to open a book and learn some manuals and learn some stuff about photography before you could just go do it. Now, fucking put the camera on P and rock out.
No doubt. So why don't we let the audience know a little bit? Who was your favorite actor, artist, hip hop artist, anyone? Who was your favorite shoot overall and why?
Wow, Chris, I like that question. My favorite picture is the person who's in front of me right now. Like that's the thing that I want to start this whole answer by saying. I don't play favorites. I don't have, I don't get starstruck. I don't get like blown away by celebrities. I give no fucks. And because of that, I've been able to have a career photographing celebrities because I'm not blowing them. You know what I mean? It's just whatever. They're just people like us.
No, that's an awesome answer. I like it.
Treat celebrities like real people, number one. So if you treat celebrities like real people, then you take a celebrity from the elevated level that we as a society, we like elevate them like, oh, Lady Gaga. But like we worship idols. Fuck that. So I take celebrities and I bring them down to earth where the rest of us are. Then I take real people who are down here in the slums because we're just the masses, and I elevate real people to the level of celebrity. And I photograph them the same way and treat them the same way. So it's like I'm kind of trying to take the people we worship and bring them down to earth, and taking people who are at earth level and elevate them. Like that's what I do. And then I show them all together on my website. Whether you know this person or whether you don't, I'm trying to elevate them all to the same level.
For sure. So I noticed that about your website. That's awesome.
That's number one. Number two is we talked a little bit about being egoless earlier. When I photograph people who have insecurities, I'm all about like elevating the ego. You know what I mean? Like it's like an amplifier. Like I'm like, hey, you're great. You look amazing. This looks awesome. Like, and I'm not lying. I'm just being honest. Like I flood people with love because that's how you like elevate someone. And then I photograph them when they're elevated, and then leave them feeling elevated. And then the photo shoot becomes more than just photography. It becomes an experience that they can kind of hold on to. And then they have the photography as like a memory backup for the experience that they had. Like everybody can make the photos, but not everybody can imitate this experience that I give when I photograph someone.
Most like definitely. It's all about the experience, customer service and stuff like that. That comes first. I
try to take it more into like, it's like an energy exchange. Like
you could be a great photographer, but you could also be an asshole as well behind that camera. You know what I mean?
100%.
It seems that you give that positive, upbeat vibe and stuff like that, which is awesome. And that seems that's why you've been so successful.
I give every shoot, whether I'm shooting the biggest celebrity or whether I'm shooting a person off the street. Everybody is a star. we're all a star to
Nice. That's a
somebody,
great way of looking
to
at
our
it.
kids, to our wife, to our girlfriends, to our friends. Like, we're a star to somebody. So as a picture maker, I kind of am a mirror for that. I stylize it a little bit, but I try to almost show that person back, hey, you're cool. You're a star. Hey, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a
Yeah.
little lift, you know? And celebrities, I photograph them, like I bringing them down to earth and giving a off moment with a celebrity to you, or giving like something that seems real or genuine. Like, we don't get that. We get only Hollywood's interpretation as to like how publicists and PR want you to see this person. So to deliver like an editorial magazine image of someone who's like just a little bit on the quirk or a little bit on the off moment, that's like, oh my God, that photographer shot this guy in an off moment and released it. Like, it's cool. You know, like I just try to, anyways, that, I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, that answers my question. That's an awesome answer. I really love how in depth you went. So where in the world is your favorite place to shoot? Do you have a one particular place, or do you have a few, or just?
I mean, so the last, I kind of didn't finish my last question because I don't have favorite pictures
or places.
I have career-changing situations and photographs.
I like this one.
That's like, imagine like looking back, career-changing picture number one. I go into the Globe and Mail. I ask them to hire me as a fashion photographer. He gives me a portrait to shoot. Do I know that him doing that is a pivotal career-changing moment? Not at the time, but
No.
that author that I shot is a science fiction writer. His name's Robert Sawyer. That Robert Sawyer went on to do crazy things. And it's like, I photographed him for his first book for the Globe and Mail. Cool. Okay, so that's like a forgettable picture, but a memorable situation. Like, the picture was great. They published it. It went in the paper. Everything's great. But the scenario set up, it's like the path was going this way, and now it's going this way. Like, that wouldn't have happened without that situation. Next, in 1997, after shooting for the Globe and Mail for 3 years, I randomly was in the right place at the right time. I was dropping off a picture of Phil Collins. So here's your picture of Phil Collins that you just assigned me to shoot. They look and they're like, "Well, that's great. It's gonna run tomorrow. Look at the paper tomorrow. It'll be in the cover of the art section. Amazing." And then she picks up an assignment. She literally was just dropped on her desk. I was there. She picks it up. She's like, "Do you know who Radiohead is?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "Do you want to photograph Radiohead?" I'm like, "Yes." And then she just passed me the assignment, and then it's like, I photographed Tom York from Radiohead. I thought I was going to photograph the whole band. I ended up only shooting Tom York.
Why only him?
The band was sick. So the Greenwood brothers were all like, we're trying to recover because we're playing shows, blah, blah, blah. So only Tom was doing press. And I met him in the hotel room. He's like drinking tea with like his legs crossed. And he's all like, so like I intently listened to the interview, and he's like talking to the reporter and blah, blah, blah. At the end, I'm like, "Hey, Tom, I'm here to make your picture." And he's like, "What do you want to do, mate?" And I'm like, "Well, I was thinking like to photograph the whole band lying on the bed from above, like what's it called? John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Rolling Stone cover. Like I referred it like that shot. Like that was the idea, but like 5 of them lying on the bed. Like that was the shot. And he's like, "Oh, mate, it's just me. I don't want to look like a wanker by myself in a hotel room. Like, can't we just go outside?" And I'm like, dude, outside was like outside hotel room picture. Outside hotel room. Like outside was like the top of the heap. So the fact that he's like, "Let's go outside." Dude, I knew
just roll with the
where
punches.
I was going to take him if he would allow me to take him outside. Like if the band let me take them outside, I already had the spot where I was going to shoot them. It was just right downstairs from the hotel. The light was perfect. So we're in the hotel, took him downstairs, took him blah, 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 took a couple of pictures. This story is pretty crazy. Took pictures, took Polaroids first. Show him the Polaroid. He's like, "Oh, great, mate. That's a great photo. Can I keep it?" I'm like, what? He wants to keep my fucking Polaroid. So he takes my Polaroid, he puts it in his jean jacket pocket. And the funny thing is he wore this jean jacket in tons of videos and all over and tour.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So he puts my Polaroid in his jean jacket pocket. Amazing. So shoot the pictures, blah, 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 give him high fives. He goes off. I fucking, you know. So they end up winning. The picture runs. They end up winning 5 Grammys for OK Computer. Radiohead.
Oh, wow.
So this is their 3rd album. Radiohead blows. It's like shooting Bono before Joshua Tree. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, is that Radiohead? Like, people would look at my portfolio and be like, is that Radiohead? It's like, yeah, bro. What? You know what I mean? So that session. So imagine, I photographed Radiohead. It runs. A year later, they're in Toronto on tour. True story. I'm with my friend JP. We call him Chico. He was my roommate at the time. And my dog. We're walking on Queen Street, just booing around. I feel it, and I had dreads at that time.
Yeah.
I feel a tap on my shoulder. Okay. I turn around. It's Tom York from Radiohead. Right there. On Queen Street. Now, behind Tom York from Radiohead is like 16-year-old girls, like,
Yeah. All in awe.
like freaking out. So he's like, aren't you that dread that photographed me last year?
That dread.
And I'm like, yeah, bro. I'm like, and he's like, do you know where Play to Record is? Like, or it was like Rotate This. He's like, do you know where Rotate This is? Like at that time, Rotate This was on Queen, just a little bit on the other side of Spadina or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm like, yes, I know where that is. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, will you take me? And he kind of points to these girls. I'm like, yeah. So me and my friend like just put him in the middle of us. He's like a short dude. And like, we kind of just walked him to the record store and we're talking and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, fucking Tom York. I'm like, we're just walking on the street of Tom York in Toronto on Queen.
Nice.
And I photographed him a year before. So he's like, hey mate, do I ever get to see that picture that you shot of me last year? I'm like, yes, bro. Like, where are you staying? Like, how can I get it to you? And he's like, I'm at the Harbor Castle Westin under James Bond. I'm like, amazing. So I go home, drop the dog, drop my roommate, and I'm like, okay, go to my archives, find like 2 pictures of Tom York printed, put them in an envelope, cardboard, sign it, and then like drive down to the Harbor Castle Westin to go to the front desk to say what? I'm looking for James Bond. Obviously, right? So drive down to the Harbor Castle Westin. I'm like, hey, standing here. I'm like, James Bond, please. And she like punches into the computer and she's like, James Bond checked out an hour ago. And I'm like, damn it. Like, are you kidding me? I came this close to delivering the picture and it didn't happen. So I get on a payphones, call my roommate Chico. I'm like, Chico, missed him. He checked out. Bummer. But he's like, dude, I'm watching Much Music. They're on Much Music right now, live. They're in the go to Much Music. So I'm like, just like drive down to Much Music. So now I'm at Much Music, but I'm a fan. I'm like thousands of people out front of Much Music with the doors open. They're watching Radiohead talk, like on intimate and interactive, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so now I'm there for like 40 minutes waiting for that to be over, blah, blah, blah. It's over. They now go in. Now I'm like at the fence, like a fan, like with thousands of other people waiting to just be able to like try to get, and I'm holding this print and just waiting. So finally they come out and like there's a crowd and I wait for like a moment of silence and I go, hey, Tom. And he turns his head and he looks and he locks eyes with me. And he's like, yo, let that dreadlock through. And it's like, all of a sudden now the gates open and I just stroll through and then the gates close and there's like 1,000 people back there. And I walk through and I'm like, I pass him the picture. He's like, you're my mate, man. You're my mate. You said what you were going to do. And because I said, I'm going to bring you this picture. And I fucking found him and I brought him the picture. So
that is amazing.
He gets in the car. They drive now through the gates, like through the crowd. You can imagine like that limo shot where everyone's like trying to look in the car, blah, blah, blah. He drives away and they turn onto Queen Street. And I see him through the back window, like open the envelope and pull out the print look at it, and then he looks out the back window as if he knew I was still looking at him, and he gives me a thumbs up. He's like, thumbs up, mate. That's fucking great. Like, it was like, it was like a full, I photograph a lot of people. I rarely, like, especially when it's magazines, I rarely get to meet them again afterwards and have like that kind of exchange. But I had that with Tom York. So you can imagine that scenario photo, first most important picture of my life. The second is Pharrell Williams, which again,
that was an amazing shoot from what I've seen, man. The bike picture, that is amazing.
That photo shoot again, like, I knew he loved skateboarding and BMX. So I met him at a skateboard and BMX store, which was my idea to meet there, because I knew there'd be lots of props and I'm telling the store owner, do you know who Pharrell is? He's like, who? Pretty big producer rapper. I'm going to bring him to your store. He's like, okay, like, what do you need me to do? I'm like, I don't know. Just let me like set up. And like, he's like, I'll do whatever you want. I don't care. So Pharrell ends up buying like a $1,000 winter jacket, like some big jacket, the jacket that he's wearing in the picture.
This is from the skateboard shop or whatever?
From the skateboard shop. He buys a BMX bike. Like, I shot him on 2 bikes. The first bike I shot him on, he had it already. He's like, I got this bike already. But that one right there, I want to use that bike for a picture, and I'm going to buy it afterwards. And then he's pulled out like this, like a American cash, and was just like, how much? And the guy's like, $2,600. And he just puts down like $3,500, and he's like, ship it to North Carolina. And he just like writes on a piece of fucking scrap his address in North Carolina, and he's like, here, ship this bike to North Carolina. It was that. So we made the picture, and then we made the second picture where he's doing these tricks, and I have him doing this no hander, no footer on the bike that he ended up buying. And again, that session became like, it was 5 years after Radiohead, but then became like the second most important, because that photo established me in hip hop. Like, that was like the concrete one, eh? Like, because I'd shot many Canadian stars, but shooting Pharrell was like, boom. And Pharrell only just got bigger. Now, I talked earlier about how I painted myself in the corner, and I was really shooting so many of these rappers that people didn't see me as an arts and entertainment photographer anymore. They only saw me as a hip hop photographer. Yeah. So that brings in like the third most important picture, which is Colin Firth. A company found my portfolio, found my website from Japan, and they were bringing Colin Firth. What this company does is it goes to film festivals all over the world, and they buy films a year after they've been released, and then they released them in Japan with dubbing. Oh, okay. So basically, they had bought Colin Firth's King's Speech, and they were releasing it a year after in Japan. So they hired me to photograph him in Toronto because he was here for the film festival for an Innocent Man, a Silent Man, I guess. Like the film that we won the Oscar for, I think it's a Silent Man.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That film that he won the Oscar for, I photographed him a week before the Oscars and a week before he won the Oscars. So it was basically like serendipitous. The Japanese client flew to Canada, to Toronto, to be there to interview him in Japanese with a translator. So there's the 2 people from Japan there. There's all Colin Firth people there. There's me and my assistant there. We're all like in this hotel room. And I'm pretty much up on tech. So at that time, I had an iPhone 4, which literally just came out. The only other person in the room that had an iPhone 4 was Colin Firth. And FaceTime, the front-facing camera, came out with the iPhone 4. Yeah. So Colin Firth had he's like, you have the iPhone 4? I'm like, yes, I do, sir. He's like, I got the iPhone 4. I'm like, what do you think of it? He's like, and he tells this amazing story where he's like, well, I did like it until I was walking into my bathroom in my hotel room to take a piss, And my assistant calls me, but I don't know that there's such a thing as FaceTime. She has the phone too. She's practicing FaceTiming me. So I just push answer. I put it up on the mirror. I start taking a piss. All of a sudden I see her. She sees me. I'm like, oh shit, she sees this. And everyone in the room is like dying laughing. She's like, I threw my phone. She hung up. I'm sorry. So everyone, like the whole room's laughing and blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, how do you get documents on your phone without plugging your phone in? And I'm like, oh, you use Dropbox and you just like upload it to your computer and then it wires. So he's like, and his assistant's writing down, oh, Dropbox. Like I'm giving him all these apps to download and all this stuff. So basically we talk about the iPhone for 25 minutes, which is my shoot time. We talk about it through my whole shoot time.
Yeah.
And then he's like, so who's making the pictures? I'm like, me. He's like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. Like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, don't worry, it's all good. And like, I had the room set up. I had my black velvet set up, my light, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just, hey, sit here. And I shoot like 2 frames and it's digital. So like I show him on the back of my camera and he says, oh shit, you're a real photographer. Okay, we're gonna have some fun now. And he just gave me like, boom, pose, boom, boom. And in like 8 minutes, I shot like 3 covers and like an inside editorial and blah, blah, blah. And then we high-fived and blah, 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 and Colin Firth people all flood out of the hotel room. The Japanese client who watched me, understand they're paying me 4 figures, like high 4 figures to shoot, for 15 minutes. And I just talked for 25 minutes and like got 0 photos. So when he saw how I shifted it and then got the pictures afterwards, he was like, oh, Mr. Carty, you're so good. Like he was bowing to me like, I don't get it. Like he didn't understand how I was so loose because they're Japanese. They're very uptight. And I was so loose and jokey and chill. But then when it came time to be professional, I was just like, click and bang, 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 bang. And then picture. And this guy had all the pictures that he needed. It happened in like 3 minutes. And he was just like, I don't understand how you do what you do. And it was one of those things that it was like validation. It's like the 3rd crazy story of my 3 most important photography experiences. And shooting Colin Firth a week before his Oscar, then him winning the Oscar and me having an Oscar winner in my portfolio. Now that again, do you want to shoot Michael Sheen for Hamlet? Do you want to shoot, like, people just look at my website and they see my portraits. And then first of all, it hurts me because it eliminates a whole bunch of people who think they can't afford me. I'm very easy to hire. And I have different rates for freaking shooting for Entertainment Weekly than I do for shooting for Bob and Rob or Job or you know, Mary or whoever who just wants to hire me for personal use or even for editorial. Like every project is different, you know what I mean? And
for sure.
I understand that not everyone's paying like crazy rates, but it's like, for me, I'm more into the photography, like the rates, the money kind of comes naturally, like when it's supposed to on the projects that it's supposed to. But shooting Colin Firth, that was the thing that I needed to do in order to then open up arts and entertainment and directors and for people to not just paint me in the corner of shooting
as that hip-hop artist,
hip-hop photographers. So then, I mean, imagine Sandra Oh from Grey's Anatomy and like a couple of other like really huge female actresses. Like I was booked to shoot Evangeline Lilly, who was like at that time she was on Lost, and I got booked. She's from Toronto, from Oshawa. I got booked to shoot her, but conflicted with her having time with her family, so it didn't happen. But it's like, I mean, it really like put me on the radar. Like Entertainment Tonight Canada, like ET Canada did a spot on me like in 2010, and it's like it just, it kind of established me as like someone who shoots this kind of stuff. And then, I mean, after 2010, it started to be like, hey, do you want to be on City Line and talking about celebrity photography? Do you want to be on Stephen and Chris? Do you want to be on like it was, then it started being like being on a lot of shows. And in 2014, I signed a 2-year deal with Canon Canada. I
Jeez,
was
you're rolling through.
Canon's
That was my next
first.
question. You beat me to it.
Yeah, I was Canon's first brand ambassador. That ended in 2016.
Now, was that
but
Canon's first brand ambassador in the world or in
in
Canada?
in Canada, in
Okay.
possibly North America, like they
Okay.
have
So what
Canon
did you do
shooters.
as the ambassador for them?
I talked and made their product super easy and sold a lot of printers. We did a Mother's Day commercial to sell that printer,
And
and
you were involved in that commercial, like in it?
yeah, I was the star of that commercial with some
Nice.
which is pretty great. And as well as like Profusion and Henry shows, like when the camera I shoot with, the 5DSR, when that came out, I demonstrated like with that camera how to shoot the 5-minute portrait, and like did a whole bunch of Profusion. But the thing is, when Canon signed me, I really felt like they didn't really have, like, they created this program for me, but they didn't really know
Where they were going with it?
where they were going with it. And then after me, they signed Peter McKinnon, and Peter McKinnon was doing all the things that I said that they needed to do. Like at the time when I was with them, they didn't have an Instagram. Like Canon Canada didn't have Instagram. They didn't have Facebook.
Out of all
have social
places, like
media.
these big places should have had it back then, but
Back
it's like
then in
lots of these
2014 for sure. So I mean, it was hard because I was like, you need to do this, 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 and this, and they weren't doing this, 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 and this. And then and at that time, they didn't see me as a video creator or a YouTuber or anything like that.
Yeah.
They only really saw me as a photographer. So I was like photographer only activations, where I'm like, no, I can talk to camera, I can be in videos, I can do videos. And it's like, basically they ended up jumping on with Peter McKinnon because he was doing all that stuff already without Canon. And he had a YouTube channel established and quite a few followers, and was really like,
So that's what knocked you out of the chain then, eh?
listen, it's like my contract was up. It was good. I made good money with them for 2 years, but unfortunately, I don't think that they used me enough. I feel like they could have used me more. And now they're using Peter McKinnon, and it's all good. It's great for Peter. And I mean, it's still, I just feel like there's a whole other side of the industry that could get some light. But again, I don't want to talk about major corporations. The hard thing about
that's fair.
Canon Canada is like, Canon Canada is a subsidiary of Canon USA. Canon USA is a subsidiary of Canon Japan, Canon Worldwide. And it's like, Canon Canada can't make decisions because they have to check with like 3 people. And by the time it's like you get the okay back, like 4 months, 5 months have passed by. And it's like, okay, like that thing that I wanted you to help with, like that was last summer. So saying yes, now you're into it. It's like amazing, but it's like I needed more nimble thinking. And
no doubt.
I had an agent there that was taking care of me, like, and that agent left to do something else. And then the person who came in after that was taking care of me was also doing like 3 other jobs because they didn't really replace the person who was taking care of me.
Yeah.
They just brought another person to do and me. So that once that happened, which was sort of like after the first year, like it really kind of, the vibe with Canon was not the same communication, not the same.
Okay.
And it's for me, not from like you see me, like I'm like, let's go, let's do stuff, let's, like, you know what I mean?
You
But
got that energy that you can't keep up with.
It's like when people aren't on the same page as far as trying to create stuff, it becomes like you're banging your head up against the wall. You know what I mean? And that was a relationship that just wasn't going to be a long term.
Nice.
So
I got a couple more questions here.
Sure, brother.
But so, you know, I see you're into like the medical cannabis and stuff like that. What's your take on the medical cannabis rather than all these medications the doctors try to prescribe us and stuff?
Well, listen, the world is waking up to all kinds of different things. Cannabis,
and you shoot it too. Like I see that in your portfolio and your website.
Like the cannabis industry opened up. I've been involved with shooting cannabis content since I've been shooting hip hop. So
wow. So that,
since like
Ja Rule, anything in High Times or anything?
No, but like Ja Rule with like a big spliff for the cover of Peace magazine, and like Bounty Killer in New York on Broadway with like a big spliff. Like I was always like, this guy's smoking a spliff and then we're about to shoot. I'd be like, dude, you can smoke the spliff and shoot. And he'd be like, really? I'm like, yeah. Like I never, even if it was very illegal at that time, it was also very like part of hip hop, part of reggae,
For
part
sure.
of like music culture.
Part
So
of it, all that arts and entertainment culture, really.
so it was like, Peter Tosh, Legalize It. That was the name of his first record. I mean, like Jamaica finally now is dealing with legalization. Like people like Bob Marley and these musicians were the people who were in the forefront, like in the 70s saying, yo, it's just
Yeah.
a plant. It's so much, it's so good for so many things. And you guys are taking these medicines when you could just take this, which grows from the earth, and you have a
Well,
little
helps
puff.
me too. I use CBD for my anxiety, depression, and even pain in my. I have arthritis, tendonitis in my shoulders from hockey from years ago and stuff. And
Yep.
you know what? World of a difference getting off all these medications. You know what I mean? I'm down to one now, which is amazing.
Well, listen, I'll tell you this. I have inflammatory bowel disease. It's called Crohn's disease. I got it when I was 18. So I've had Crohn's disease my entire adult life.
Yeah.
It ended my hockey career. It essentially started my photography career because I realized I had to do something that wasn't like dependent on my body. I had to,
Yeah.
I had surgery after I moved back from Miami. I had surgery. I had 2 feet of intestine removed. So I
Oh
have
wow.
like a big stomach scar. I've my up until like from age 18 until I was 35, I've been heavily medicated. I've had 2 surgeries during that time. I've had intestine taken out. I've flatlined. I've been in a coma for 4 days. Like I've gone through like medical stuff
Yeah.
through having Crohn's disease to the point where it's ended my life, but I was resuscitated and here we are. So going from that and being heavily medicated to I'd never smoked cannabis when I was young. I started smoking cannabis when I was 21.
Oh,
So
okay.
from that point, I used
Now, did you
cannabis.
start smoking it just for fun or
It was
for to help
recreation.
you?
It was
Yeah.
recreation early and for creativity and for opening my mind because at that
Yeah.
time I was quite, although I was all free and cool in Ryerson, still, I was still quite like,
Very
trying
narrow-minded.
trying
Yeah.
to like find my own self was difficult in a world where I didn't think that my own self mattered. So cannabis really helped me with that, opening my mind and experiencing it out with other creative people. And being creative while on cannabis was something that was never a thing, but I realized later in my career that it was something that actually really helped me. I would ideaize, have a spliff, come up with these crazy ideas, and then execute them the next day. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it would be like I would write shit down and do it. Like a lot of people smoke weed and do nothing. For me, I would smoke weed and do shit. Like it was always associated with like, I'm doing something. All right. You know what I mean? Like it was never like, I'm just going to bake out on the couch and do bong hits. Like that was never my vibe. It was always associated with creativity and positivity. And also I had always associated it with people who did stuff. Like everyone who I knew who smoked weed did stuff. They weren't smoking weed and doing nothing. They were smoking weed and also art directors and also
Yeah.
designers and also company owners and all that stuff. So I was exposed to people who were obviously illegally using weed, but that were business leaders. You know what I mean? So it was no
No,
real,
for sure. For
I
sure.
wasn't really stressing
It was
about
a
it.
taboo back then.
The medication that I was taking was wreaking havoc on my body.
For
I was
sure.
on
All these
serious
prescriptions
prednisones
do.
and
Yeah.
anti-inflammatories and like anti-rejection drugs and stuff. So after like turning into my 30s and really getting on like riding bikes, which I'm sure you're very aware that I ride bikes. Like bikes kind of saved my life
I
because
see that in your videos, some cool ones.
it got my core back and got my stomach working. And I realized
Nice.
like as long as I was exercising and riding bikes, I could kind of reduce my medication. At the same time, I was using cannabis. So if I would have pain, rather than taking my medication, I'd have a spliff and the pain would go away. So I was like, why am like the medication had all kinds of side effects, like making me aggressive and
Yeah, I
super,
hated those side effects too. Like,
you know?
I want to get rid of my suicidal thoughts, but they set you on these fucking antidepressants that give you suicidal thoughts.
So imagine I managed to wean myself off all medication and use only cannabis. And this is like going back to 2005.
Yeah.
And my doctor's like, okay, well, if you need, he's like, if you need me to fill out forms so you can have it medically, happy to do it. And for me, I'm just like, I still have to pay for it. Like it's just not like, there's no legal way for me to buy it at that time. Like it really
Yeah.
just stops me from going to prison. So I wasn't really stressing about it. I was pretty careful. But now it's like going into my 40s, like I'm 49 now. So going into my 40s, I was like just cannabis only. I smoke every day and often, and I feel no pain from, I mean, I don't want to say feel no pain, but I take no medication,
It's
and
been reduced though a lot.
I'm not medicated at all. All my internal pain is regulated with cannabis, CBD, different strains,
Nice, man.
suppositories,
That's
oil,
awesome,
like
man.
all that stuff. So it's all cannabis. And for me, I'm healthier. I look healthier. I'm healthier now than I was when I was 20, and
That's amazing,
I'm
Steve.
almost 50. So
Nice. Nice.
and the clients, that comes from legalization. I started shooting for licensed grow operations that were legally licensed to grow marijuana. I started shooting for them just before legalization, because legalization was like on the dawn, and legalization came in 2018, and I started shooting like October 2018, and I started shooting cannabis clients that were paying me to shoot cannabis content in January. So it started to be like I had a good year of making that content leading up to legalization. And then since legalization, it's like, people sending you like, because I've always been openly a cannabis user. So it's valid when I'm the guy who's creating content, because it's authentic. So I understand the plant. Shooting the content works for me. But I've also like shot construction build outs of marijuana facilities being
Oh
like
wow.
75,000 square foot grow operations, like
Now for their
photographing it from the
websites or
ground up.
something, eh?
Yeah, of course. Like
Yeah.
investors and like updates with investor relations and all that stuff. Like I'm deep into it, but unfortunately right now, as I'm sure you know, the cannabis industry is taking a huge hit, because cannabis is meant to be grown at a craft level, not at a McDonald's level. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
what happens when you put up like million square feet, like vast, like clean rooms just growing weed, and it's like versus like growing one guy growing like 10 plants. It's like the one guy growing 10 plants can get weed that's at a higher, stronger, more potent level than trying to grow that weed en masse. And what's happening is like the stuff that's going to the OCS and like that's going to legal, I guess, dispensaries, is the stuff sits on shelves because there's so much of it. It sits on shelf. Like, first of all, it sits in a vault for a year. So imagine something's grown January 1st, 2020, sits in a vault until January 1st, likely, or September, or like 10 months, 8 months, 7 months, 6 months. It sits in a vault for a long time, even before it's packaged. And then when it's packaged, it's dated. So it's already a year old and it's dated, like this is the date that it was packaged. Then
Yeah.
it goes to OCS and sits in stock in the warehouse and gets rotated in till a point when you finally buy it, that weed is fucking 2 years old. You
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's like anybody who's dealt with black market, or anybody who knows like good flower, knows like that shit is old. And it's $17 a gram, bro. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So black market is nimble. Black market, like, dude, everybody has a guy, but when it gets to the point where buying legal weed, anybody who is a real connoisseur of marijuana buys from OCS once. It's garbage, and they're like, well, that was stupid. I just lined
Yeah.
up for an hour and got shit. You know what I mean? And also, we haven't opened up as many stores, blah, blah, blah. They're like, you're not allowed to see it. Imagine if you had to buy wine, not ever seeing the bottle.
Yeah.
Imagine like you could never see the bottle, or buying a whiskey or tequila or something like that, and you didn't get to see the bottle. It's just all behind glass. You line up and you're like, you look at a book and you're like, I want that. And you know what I mean? And it comes
Yeah.
and it's sealed. You can't even see it. It's inside the box. You're just like, what is this? And the packaging, you buy a gram of weed, you get 12 grams of packaging. 1
Oh
gram
shit. No,
equals
it's
kind of
so
12 grams.
much recyclables and shit.
Non-recyclable
Oh,
packaging.
sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Non-recyclable.
Non-recyclable because it has metal inside the plastic. It's a non-recyclable. Like, they've made this stuff childproof, but also, do you know that you can just open any whiskey bottle and just drink it? So if you are an adult, you have children, do you know that they could just get your alcohol and just glug, 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 glug?
No doubt,
But
no doubt.
weed, oh my God, weed, that shit needs to be like in a safe. Like, motherfucker, if your kid wants weed, he's getting it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No doubt.
whether it's in a Ziploc or in a childproof, like, well, we just want kids to get it. Yeah, but kids can get alcohol too. Like, they can get bleach and cleaner and all the other shit that's under your sink that's toxic. Like,
Yeah, no
in
doubt.
Canada, like in the US, you can look at the flower, smell the flower, be like, I don't know, it's a bit stale. Show me what else you got. And like, it's not pre-packaged and you buy it packaged. Like,
No, it's not.
like,
You
what do you
pick out
want?
the buds and they weigh it out for you. I know.
Dude, like a grown-up. Do you know? And people are wondering, well, why is legal cannabis failing in Canada? Because they treating us like children. We're grown-ups. We're like, you know what I mean? So, anyways, the hard thing is, like, I'm paying like $5 a gram. Do you know what I mean? For cannabis, and it's like better than $20 a gram at OCS.
For sure.
Because people who are nimble and doing black market are like, hey, compete. That's my competition. My stuff's better and cheaper. What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
guess what? I'll bring it to your house.
No doubt.
I'll bring it to your house. I'll be COVID masked up. I'll have gloves on. I'll put you in your little sealed package, put it in your mailbox. You know what I mean? You can EMT me, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like, whew. Like, black market is alive and well because they're not treating us like adults. If they treated us like adults and allowed us to have a little bit more freedoms and trusted us like that, we wouldn't be, I mean, it's like one person wrecks it for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
One guy with his weed open on the table and his 4-year-old comes and like gobble, 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 gobble. It's like, well, okay, dude, you're stupid.
No
you know
doubt.
what I mean? But at the same point, that guy's gonna, like, there's way more problems beyond what that guy's doing, and the childproof container is not the deterrent for that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So, anyways, that sidebar.
Yeah, no worries. So we're almost at the end here. I just want to ask you a few things, like positive things. You know, what are 3 positive things you could tell the people out there or the youth? You know, so they could become successful like you one day. You know what I mean? Like, what are 3 positive things to instill in their heads? You know,
number one, many don't think that the arts is a viable career. I'm not saying being within the arts is easy, but people who are singers, players of musical instruments, artists, photographers, filmmakers, like, we do this shit because we have to, you know, and not necessarily because we're choosing to live a life of unsurety. Like, sure, I could just work for a company and have like a steady paycheck and, you know, not, and oh my God, get fired and then have to go find somewhere else, or not like it and have to go somewhere else and get it. Like, you can either chase working for other people, you can work for yourself. For me, I opted to work for myself because I wanted to have the control and be my own boss and create something that only I could do. And being a photographer and a budding filmmaker, like, I'm able to do that. So number one, first piece of advice is you have to turn what your passion is into a job, because only when your job is your passion would you do it for free. Only when your job is your passion would you put in the effort that it takes to make $1 million a year at it. Only when it's your thing. We never put as much effort into something that is someone else's thing as we would for our own thing. So early, start developing what your own thing is. You want to make films, you want to be a comedian, you want to be a writer, you want to be a photographer. Like, dive in, find someone who's actually doing it, super successful, and get in their ear, get them on the phone, get in front of them.
That's what my mentor told me too.
Like you people, the people who get to meet me, I'm like, when people want to convert to Judaism, Chris, what I do is, like, I make them reach out to me 3 times. If they don't reach out, like, someone calls me, they're like, hey, is this Steve Carty? I'm like, yeah, who's speaking? It's like, oh, I was just trying to be your assistant. I'm like, dude, send me an email. Gotta go. Click. It's like, not being rude, but it's like, you can't just call me. and be like, hey, I want to
Yeah.
do it. Like, send me an email. Like,
Do
break
something
it
a little more
down.
formal.
Tell me why. Like, you know what I mean? So that's first thing, deferral, you know? And if they don't send the email, done. No problem. They're not into it. They're not passionate and they can't follow instructions. So they send me an email. I now check the email, read over the email. I'm like, okay, that's a bit more of a convincing story. Then so that's the second interaction. And I reply back, send me a note on Monday. So now Monday comes. If they don't send me a note, bye, Felicia. But if they send me a note Monday, now I'm like, okay, 3 hoops. Now I'll talk to you on the phone. Simple. And now you can ask me anything. But it's like, now we can meet. Now there's a possibility that I'll let you come to my studio. I'll let you watch me shoot. I'll holler at you and be like, hey, you want to assist me this afternoon? They'll be like, oh my God, yes. Like, I'll do that kind of stuff with someone once they've proven that they can follow 3 instructions. First of all, it's never cool to just call someone. Text them. Be like, hey, oh my God, I love your work. Do you have a free moment? I'd love to have your ear for a second. And I'm going to reply back, no. We don't know each other like that. You can't just call me yet. Send me an email. Tell me a story. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, dude, I really, really want to shoot Kanye West. I've shot Kanye. That's a bad example, but I really, really want to shoot like Penelope Cruz or like whatever, some actress. Like, you don't just, A, you don't have their phone number. B, you can't just call. For me, I make myself available. I put my phone number online so people can just call me. But the thing is like, if you're going to just call me, that's like, because you're trying to hire me. You're like, hey, do you have a sec to talk about like this job? And then it's like, yes, blah, 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 talk. But guess what? What we just talked about, let's get it all down in an email. I have
so it's on paper.
Blah, blah, blah. It's all written down. Like, that's the way to start the back and forth is like, in a call is great, but let's establish some stuff. Also easier to talk about numbers in an email than like, hey, how much does it cost for me to shoot this? It's like, off the top of my head, $1 million, dude. I don't like, like, you got to give me a sec. You know what I mean? You got to give me a second to process it. And it's also like, I'm not trying to scare people away, but if you come to me with, hey, how much does it cost me to shoot this? It's like, dude, you're just looking for somebody to take a picture for a price. Like, you just want to know how much. Like, if I'm like $1 million, they're like, okay, click, next person. How much? $1,000? How much? $20? Okay, cool. I'm going to go with you. Like, the person who calls me, that's that guy, I catch that and kind of just, I want people to call me because they want me to make their photos. You know, they want me to shoot their videos.
Yeah, not looking for fishing around.
Not just looking for a guy with a camera. I'm not a guy with a camera. I like to think that I'm way more than that. So the first point that you asked me is like, what are 3 things that people have to do? The first thing is find your passion and fucking dive in with both feet. No one can tell you no. No one can. I mean, if it's a dumb idea, you have to kind of reevaluate. I mean, and who am I to say what a dumb idea is? But understand, if you have a valid idea, you've ran it by a few people, they're like, hey, that's cool, you should do that. Jump in with both feet, because no one's going to do it like you. No one's responsible for making you famous except for you. Like, literally, no one out there is hired to make you famous except you. Like literally, you can have a publicist, but really, unless you're paying dough, people aren't in your best interest. They're in their own best interest. So you have to kind of make yourself a priority. Number 2, reach out to the people who are doing it already and politely, impactually, memorably get into their head and be like someone who they're like, hey, I could have lunch with this guy. Hey, I could have a coffee with this guy. This guy seems cool. Be like that to people who you're hoping to be your mentor. And then number 2, as hard as it is to say, be okay in the arts industry in the beginning for doing stuff for free. Not everything, but some things, it's worth shooting a model for free, because if that girl is a real model, having that model in your portfolio is worth more to you than the $300 you're going to charge her. That $300 is just a deterrent, because they could call someone like me and give me $300 and get 30 years of experience without the attitude. You know what I mean? So when you're brand new, be selective, but be okay with doing things for free, because early on, you have to learn the difference between an opportunity or someone taking advantage of you. You have to learn that early, and you have to kind of like work through that process of, this is a good benefit or this guy's trying to screw me. You have to kind of work through that early, and you work through that in your first 3 to 5 years of business. Like sometimes you're going to be shooting for $500, sometimes you're going to be shooting for nothing. But all of this stuff goes together as a portfolio, and all of this stuff ends up being something that we can end up using later to leverage more work.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing that I would say, which is important for people at all levels of photography, not just learning. The self-directed project, meaning when you don't have an assignment, you create an assignment for yourself. Imagine you like technology, create a whole thing where you're shooting lifestyle work with technology. You're shooting models and friends and with technology, interacting with technology. Like that whole stuff becomes a stock library, and that stuff ends up being sold and resold and resold and you get model releases from these people. Like the self-directed project is how photographers go from obscurity to household name. Like people know you for that project you did. Do you know what I mean? So like,
that particular
if you
one.
love streetwear or you love kicks, it's like you come up with an idea and you do an execution on kicks, and it's your own assignment, and you treat it as if Details Magazine or GQ gave you the assignment. Like treat it like that. Then you open GQ and you're like, oh my God, what did GQ's last story on shoes look like? And you essentially like imitate as if you're getting high-end assignments for $10,000, $20,000 a day. Like you essentially like create a self-directed project for yourself, which you have to treat just like there's a client, but the client is you and you're answering to yourself, which is very difficult to do. Essentially, you set something, set an idea, set a day to shoot it, and you set a deadline for it to be done. And then you just do it. And it costs,
that's like I do every day. I write a goal down every morning. It's the same goal over and over. Sometimes it changes because I've fulfilled that goal, so I add another thing into it. You know, it's just a daily thing for me, man. Life's an ongoing thing. It's not a one-day process. It's an ongoing process.
Listen, so if, as a shooter, if you have multiple self-directed projects on the go, you always have something to shoot. There's never like, I don't know what I should be doing. When in between assignments, it's like, well, I have 3 self-directed projects that I'm working on simultaneously. So I'm not shooting an assignment today. I'm going to get my friend and we're going to go do that, blah, blah, blah. And work on that, and it's then I'm gonna finish it, and it's gonna go on my book. Now you have new work. What happens when you have new work? You're super excited about being like, hey, do you want to see this?
For sure.
That's when you have the motivation to be like, hey, X magazine, hey, X blog, hey, X client, hey, like whatever the thing is, being X, you get to reach out to them and be like, look at this thing that I shot that's right up your alley. I just did this self-directed project on kicks. I shot X. I shot this shoe, this shoe, this shoe, this shoe, and it has nowhere to live. Are you interested in printing it? And they're like, hey, it's like giving someone a meal that they didn't know that they were invited to dinner.
No
it's
doubt.
Like, hey, I'm going to cook everything. I'm going to do everything for you. And I'm just going to ask you if you want to come eat it. Like, it's a gift. Self-directed projects are how people go from obscurity to household name. Because if that runs, now all of a sudden it's like, I have an 8-page spread in the New York Times.
Yeah,
do they need to know that you submitted it or they hired you? It's irrelevant. It
doesn't matter,
Times, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can see every magazine, it says at the bottom of the masthead, we accept manuscripts, photographs, and submissions for consideration for publication.
All magazines do that.
Everyone. It's easy breezy. And for them, it's free money. Because to hire someone to shoot that story, whew, that costs dollars. But to just pay someone usage to run that story, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And for
That's
you,
awesome, man.
and so those are like three key things. First of all, jump in with both fucking feet. Because if you're not, guys like me are just gonna run you over. Honestly, I have no time for people who are half-assing anything, or like, I thought like, dude, good, cool, keep at it, because people like me are going to mow you over. But if you have that mentality, like you have to be a shark. A shark has to be able to see blood in the water and attack, see an opportunity and attack. But you also have to be a dolphin. Dolphins are super smart, but also super playful. And it's like, hey, I'm fun to be around. Let me pop a ball in the air and do a couple of flips for you. And aren't you excited? Like, we got to be a dolphin, but we also have to be a shark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The shark hunts the opportunities. The dolphin executes the opportunities.
Well, that's where you come in and make them all happy and go.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
I'm both people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you kind of have to learn how to find the opportunities, how to act on the opportunities, how to execute the opportunities. And it's kind of a little bit of a different personality for each.
For sure.
Self-directed project is how you become
one.
famous. That's huge. Like you can't, and also last is, your look and feel to your pictures has to be separate from the rest while also being contemporary. You know what I mean? Some people belong to what I call the style of the month club as photographers, meaning whatever is the hot look, feel, idea thing now, they're doing it. If lens balls are cool, they're fucking shooting with lens balls. If like shooting super wide angle is cool, they're doing that. If shooting like whatever is like the gimmick, the hook, the thing at the moment, they're doing that. If black and white's cool, they're shooting black and white. If hypercolor's cool, they're doing that. And they change all the time. Those people belong to something what I call the style of the month club. If you belong to the style of the month club, you can never really also be like people coming to you for your look and feel and style, because it changes fucking all the time and they don't know what it is. You know what I mean? So anybody who is a household name photographer, they have a look and feel that is unmistakably, unquestionably that person. Like,
that's awesome.
You know,
you gotta have your own unique feel. You know what I mean? Be original.
But it's a visual originality, which is different. Like photographers, painters. If you think about Banksy, great example. Banksy has a visual signature that if you walk down the street and you looked and saw Banksy on the wall, you'd be like, "Is that a fucking Banksy?" Like because his stencil, his style has been established as his. It's heavily imitated, but it's his style. So with photography, it has to be that same vibe where you can look and be like, that's Stephen Maisel, that's Helmut Newton, that's Avedon, that's and anybody who's trying to shoot in that style, you want people to be like, that's Steve Carty's photograph. And if someone's like, no, that's not Carty, that's someone else, you want that person to be like, well, they're imitating Carty, because that's Carty's visual signature. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of level where I take it. And people who assist me, the problem when you assist a photographer is their isms wear off on you. Like they get stuck to you because that's all you see is that photographer doing cool light, cool this, cool that. And then when you want to shoot, what do? You're like, that fucking light was okay. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try. Like I teach my assistants to don't do what I do. See what I do, but don't just regurgitate my style, bro. That's copying. That's not original. See my style and hate me and find your own. And every time
add your own little twists and turns into it.
Every time you do something and be like, Carty would do this, you fucking go the other direction. Because you're trying to establish your own isms, not imitating my isms. Yeah. Anybody who assists me, you assist me for 6 months, you can shoot exactly like me. It's super easy. But it's like my assistants have somehow managed to have their own content, their own subject matter, their own things that they're interested in. They're inspired by me and my look and feel, but it doesn't look like me.
Okay, well, that's awesome, man.
So I don't know, Chris. I hope all of that. I mean, you can see
I
I'm a super
appreciate
passionate dude, right?
you're very passionate, man, and I appreciate the time you took to do this episode with me, man. So again, thanks again, Steve Carty, for coming on. Do you have any social media pages that they can follow if they want?
Oh my goodness, the end of the podcast shoutouts. We don't love that more than anything. My goodness. You can follow me at Steve Carty. My last name is like party, but with a C, C-A-R-T-Y, at Steve Carty on all socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can go to stevecarty.com is my website, where I have an extensive collection of
That is true, folks. He does have a very nice collection on there.
Website, including video, celebrities, my archive, like stuff from the past, current work, how to get a hold of me. Like, I'm a website tweaker, so I really I may scrap my website and build another one, which I do literally every 2 years. And I've had this website, I think, for almost 3, although I've tweaked it quite a lot. I mean, I love websites and what websites do for photographers and what they say for a photographer. Imagine your website is the first inclination of how most people see your work, is either your website or Instagram. So I take great pride in my website. I put tons of effort into it. And it would be amazing if y'all took a look at stevecarty.com and sent me an email, note, DM, and mentioned that you heard me on this podcast. That'd be amazing.
Thanks, Steve, again, and hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care, man.
Chris, thank you so much for taking the time and inviting me on your podcast. It was great. I loved talking to you, and I'm at your whim. Reach out to me anytime. I'd love to be a guest again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Steve.